I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC.
All right, guys, let's do a little flight demo of this full speed BeeBee 6.6. This is a prop guard version. They also make a lightweight version with no prop guards, the BeeBee Lite. So let's go ahead and plug this little battery in. I'll give you a little flight test, just line of sight out in front of me, and then we're gonna go over there and fly around the little playground set. So this is a pretty fun little kind of brushless tiny whoop style quadcopter. And I know the designer of this one, and he's super awesome guy. He also designed the Leader 120, so you guys know how much I like that one. Pretty excited to fly my first BeeBee 6.6. Can't wait to fly the Lite version for you guys next, but we'll start out with this 6.6 version. It's really cool. It does have a TPU printed, 3D printed top on it, and everything should be pretty nicely protected in here. It's got TPU mounts on the bottom and some pretty cool little motors on there. But anyway, guys, let's go ahead and give it a little flight test with the X10S. Then we'll do some FPV. Here we go. Listen to those motors scream. Look how small this thing is. I had to fly it closer so you guys can see it. And you can fly this in full Acro, so check that out. Now I'm in full Acro. Takes a little getting used to with all this wind. So lightweight. Kind of wondering if I could flip it. I don't really want to break it before I FPV it for you guys, but full Acro is kind of hard to do. Oh yeah. Especially when you get caught by the wind and you just whip downwind. It doesn't have a ton of power in the motors, but that's also probably this cheap battery I'm using for the line of sight test. If you get something like those GNB 250 milliamps, those are probably the battery of choice. Now, I'm gonna do a full throttle punch out here. Can't really call this a punch out, but there you go. That battery's kind of doing its, you know, it's holding its own pretty good. Flying into the wind's probably a little better. Downwind, it's like a rocket. It goes straight at the grass. I'm gonna go back in stabilize mode, man. This wind is kicking my butt. So let's go ahead and do some FPV. I'll try to keep this thing in the air with a little bit of wind that we have today. And I'm gonna use one of those GNB batteries because those are gonna be a lot better. A little more power for what I'm looking for here. I also think a 2S setup on this would be super awesome. That would really show you some extra power and probably be a little bit more fun and probably quite powerful on these super light frames. So here we go, we'll do some FPV.
The
All right, guys, welcome back from that flight test. This was a lot of fun. I like these little 1S quadcopters, and this one is a little bit different than what I flew yesterday, the A100. It had a different prop style and a totally different frame on it, but this was designed by Lewis over at Frsky RC, and I've known Lewis for some time. We've emailed back and forth for about a year now. He originally designed the Leader 120, and I love that one. It was actually a super awesome quad, and I got two of these versions of the BeeBee I got the BeeBee original version from GearBest, and Lewis was nice enough to custom build this one and send it over to me for a test from Frsky RC. So I'll put both the links down below for you guys, and decide on which one after you watch this review that you would like to get. That's totally up to you. But again, two different designs. This one flies a little better because it doesn't have the prop guards on the extra weight, but this one also saves your props with these carbon fiber prop guards that go around it. And those are under 1 millimeter in thickness, and they actually held up during the durability test. So very good, and it saves your props. Also, the components on here are top notch. They are kind of everything we want in a brushless micro, something tiny whoop size brushless. So that's been the revolution in the last 6 months, is brushless tiny whoops. Because originally when we started out with these, and they're brushed motors, and a lot of people complained that they kind of went out over time and needed to be replaced. Not so much with the brushless. The motors are probably 5 times as powerful as the original brushed motors. But a lot of times people aren't flying these in Acro, they're flying in full stabilization, indoors mostly. And you even have to turn off your AC unit or your heat, because the vents, the little bit of circulation in the air will actually cause these not to fly as well. So they're very susceptible to wind. Any type of wind, these just don't fly really that great. And even though these are more powerful, these are kind of susceptible to the same types of thing. Outdoor with a little bit of wind, they're really hard to control. So pick and choose your best day to fly these, probably a day with no wind. And in my experiences, most likely you're gonna have the best experience with the one with the prop guards. Now this does add a little more weight, and I will weigh both of these in this review for you guys so you can get an idea of the difference between the weight between the prop without the prop guards and with the prop guards. It's not a huge difference, but it does make a difference with flight characteristics. So this one's going to have a little more punch out than the original one with the prop guards on it, the first one I got. Now it also makes a big difference when you're going to hit things with this. So I didn't have to replace any props on this one, and this one I broke props on. So there's a bit of a difference there between these two. So you're going to have to buy some extra props if you're flying without prop guards. Generally speaking, when I'm flying tiny whoop, a lot of times I'm kind of forced to fly with prop guards. So I like the option that you can actually remove this and fly it without the prop guards. So it just does fly a little bit better without the prop guards. Now Lewis threw everything at these two designs that we wanted in something this small, sort of a lot of 5-inch category type stuff, like full on-screen display from Betaflight. You can flash this board up to 3.2 on here, and you're running brushless motors. You can also run different various types of batteries, and what I'm going to recommend, don't even buy the regular size batteries. Make sure you buy the high voltage batteries, because I tested out some regular batteries that were just regular 1S 230 milliamp, and they really didn't fly all that great. The real power for this setup is going to come from your HV batteries, and this GNB battery performs really nice. It's a 4.35 volt, and HV, if you notice, it's going to be a little higher voltage on the battery readout than the traditional 1S battery. So if you're looking for these on the internet, make sure that you buy the HV versions of these batteries. Otherwise, you're not going to get a very good flight time or performance out of this quadcopter. Now I'll just show you this one up close, and you can see the flight controller is in the middle of the stack, and there's a lot of wires in here that are tucked in, and it's neatly built. Lewis is a really good builder, so he pays attention to detail. All the wires are nicely tucked inside. These are a little bit hanging out, but this is a huge harness on this side for all of the different signal wires coming up from the ESC to tell the flight controller which motor is which motor, and your OSD wires coming from the camera down to the flight controller, and the 5-volt powering the camera itself. And the flight controller is a 1S version of the teeny F3 flight controller on here, and is configurable, like I said, in Betaflight. You
can up this to Betaflight 2.0, but you'll notice that the USB is right here on this side, and it's directly in front of this motor. Now, this is a 45-degree angled flight controller on here. You can see from the very top it's actually sitting to the side, so that would be the front, but since we have it angled inside Betaflight, you'll notice that it's on a 45-degree tilt in the orientation for the flight controller in the configuration tab. So since that USB port is over here on the side and the motor's in the way, you can either take this motor off or you can use this little device that Lewis has given us inside this box. It's a little USB link that's on a 90-degree tilt, and this is really nice actually for not just for this quadcopter and being able to get into Betaflight by just plugging in like this. This is also nice for flying wings. A lot of flight controllers have their USB port on the side like that, sticking out from the side. Only the F-35 from Furious FPV recently made a vertical port for FPV wings, but this is a really nice addition that he did that. Now, you guys saw this one yesterday that I reviewed. This is the A100 from Aurora RC, and you'll notice that these motors look very similar. This one has a lot of mud on it. I'll just spin this one around here so you can see this. This is a Sunny Sky motor, and Full Speed has the same exact motor on there, but they have their own label on it. So these are rebranded Sunny Sky motors, and those are 70705 15,000 kV motors, so they're super hopped up for this one-ass application. Now, one would expect that this would have way better performance given that this one is probably 10 grams lighter than the A100, but this one also has larger props on here, and this is a huge difference that it's swinging just a little bit bigger props. So this one actually flies probably a little smoother and is a little bit more aerobatic. So while you can fly this one in Acro, I think mostly the best performance that I got out of this was probably flying it in the stabilized mode, just like a regular traditional Tiny Whooper Inductrix FPV. Yeah, flying in Acro, it seems to be just a little bit peculiar and a little bit odd feeling. It might be the props that it's swinging. These props are just not quite as a good feeling on those as something like a larger hub stand style prop. So, and you guys know, if you watch the channel, I'm not a super huge fan of these little AIO all-in-one cameras. They are 600 TVL, but they're only 25 milliwatt and they're not switchable. Some of them might be switchable, but not this one. This one is 25 milliwatt dedicated, and it does have 48 channels on here, and I believe 5 bands. I also have my receiver tucked in between the flight controller right here, and there's a little spot. This is cool that he made a little sort of hole right there for the receiver wire, the antenna, to come out of, so it has it pretty well separated from your antenna here. Now this one, I ran it out on the other side, and you want to make sure these are nicely separated so you don't get any interference coming from your video signal back to your goggles. So that makes a nice separation between the two. But for this review, and most guys want to know this, you want to know what it flies like, because if you're considering buying it, you need to know some of this stuff. And I talked about this before, and if this quadcopter has any type of wind interference with it, with these tiny little blades that come with it, the 40mm blades are quite small, and this airframe, you know, 66 millimeters from motor to motor, it is quite susceptible to wind. I mean, like when we were flying the original Tiny Whoops, like I said, even a little bit of heat coming out the vent in your house is going to interrupt some of the flight characteristic of this and make it harder to fly. So you definitely want to maybe fly this in a parking deck or somewhere where you have a tremendous wind shadow, where there's a huge building, maybe a huge wall or something blocking the wind if you do fly it outside. But I have seen people fly these outside. I flew mine, and it's just a little harder outside. I had way more control indoors, and the yaw snaps with it were a lot better indoors where there was no interference from wind. So I would classify this one primarily an indoor flyer. If you do sort of any indoor multi-GP races or things like that, or you're flying in a gymnasium, this one's going to be the best performer inside. Now, just under that teeny 1S F3 flight controller, we have a tiny little teeny 4-in-1 6 amp ESC, and this is pretty cool. It's burst up to 7 amps. And that's pretty neat. It also supports D-Shot 600, so if you're setting that up in the configuration, you want to set that up on D-Shot 600 inside Betaflight, and you also want to up the motor timing to about 7 so that you get the best performance out of these ESCs with your high voltage battery. Now I'm just going to go ahead and give you guys a dry weight, and let's go ahead and weigh the one with the prop guards first, and we'll weigh the battery that came along with it. So 29 grams with the prop guards, and with a battery that 260 milliamp, you're up to 36.3 grams right there total takeoff weight. So this one is quite a bit heavier of a combo with the extra TPU bottom mounts. And one note about those, I lost all of the screws that came with those except for one here. So these are kind of flopping around. So I'm not sure that that's the best design choice right there, because for some reason these screws just won't stay put. So maybe a little tiny piece of hot glue would hold that. The other problem with this is that it's loosening up right here as well. So this is going to make the motor possibly start to vibrate or come loose from the frame. You want to use a little bit of Loctite right here on the bottom of this, but be careful not to get your Loctite inside your motor right here. Also, if you take this off, you need to know that this screw is longer than the other two right here, because if you drive this back up into the motor right here and it touches these copper coils inside the motor, you can damage or even break your motor. And now we'll weigh the other one without the prop guards, and the dry weight on that one's going to be 25.2 grams. So let's just go ahead and A and B them right there. So we're 29 grams with the prop guards and the TPU mount. See, this one doesn't have such a large TPU mount on it, so that does make this one even lighter at 24.3 grams. And then total with the battery that comes along with it, the 260, we're looking at 31.7 grams. And my original tiny whoop with the brushed motors from Rack and Heli here, this is the upgrade kit, 21.7 grams, and I was flying it with one of these 230 milliamps, and that's 28.3. Now if I add the G&B battery on there, the 260, we're looking at 28.8. So relatively close to the same weight on these. And actually, this one is just a few grams more at 31.9. So I'll take the brushless motor version any day over the original Tiny Whoop. Now, if you're still watching this review, this is what I'm going to help you out with here. If you're trying to decide which 1S brushless micro to buy, because there's so many of them out there now, like the A100, the BAT100, the full-speed BeeBee 66, the BeeBee 66 Lite, one thing you have to decide is, do you want a dedicated indoor flyer mostly, or do you want an indoor-outdoor flyer? So the A100 is really going to be more of an indoor-outdoor flyer. You can fly this one indoors, outdoors, but this one doesn't have prop guards. But these props are also quite durable, and they're actually pretty cheap to buy. So I would classify the BeeBee 66 and the BeeBee 66 Lite more of an indoor flyer. So you can make that decision yourself. Do you want something with a little more diversity, indoor, outdoor, or primarily indoor dedicated, or maybe inside a gymnasium or parking deck? This would be the choice for those two. Because hey, we have really come a long way, and I've been watching Lewis's progression, because Lewis is in the hobby. He's a dedicated pilot and manufacturer. So that's what I think is great about Full Speed RC. Not only are they manufacturers, but they're also pilots themselves, and they race. So that makes a big difference when you're designing a frame for the FPV community. Now, originally, check this out. I've got some history here on the bench for you guys to check out. This is the original brushless micro that I got. This is one of the first beasts that came into my shop that was a micro, and we were running this one on 3S, I think I remember. And check this out. These are DYS. These are 1104s on this gigantic frame. So this is sort of where brushless micros started out. So in about 2.5 years, this is how far we've come. We've actually come from such a large quad like this with full, this thing was insane when it first came into my shop. I thought, what were they thinking designing something like this? This is a full PDB on top, and ESCs were actually incorporated into the arms. So when an arm broke, you lost an ESC and everything. And I actually did a repair on mine and replaced one of these arms. It was a giant nightmare to work on this. So this one has become sort of a something that sits on the shelf as more of a decoration than anything else. And it flew extremely heavy, as you could imagine, even with a 3S battery. So we've come a long ways, and I gotta say thank you to people like Lewis at Full Speed RC for taking us a step further in the evolution of quadcopters and brushless micros. So we're headed in a really neat direction. We have everything we want on these. Full Speed is doing a great job. So either one of these, you're gonna have a good time with the purchase. And if you keep in mind that it is an indoor flyer, you're going to have a good time with the BeeBee If I was going to buy either one of these, if you're going to ask me which one to buy, I would probably go with this one, mainly because you have the option to remove these if you want to, but you can also put them back on if you want to fly indoors and save oodles and oodles of props. So I didn't break any props during my flight test with this particular model. So definitely going to be way more durable with this little top shell on here and the prop guards. So that's my opinion. I'm going to post both links down below for you guys, and you can make your decision on which one you want to go for. So I'm going to go ahead and give these a star rating for my review, and I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars for both of these designs. Now, they both do different things. This one flies maybe a little better, has a little more punch out, and this one flies a little bit heavier, but it does have prop guards saving your props. And this prop guard setup here, even though it's under 1 millimeter thin, it didn't break on me. Even though the screws fell out, it protected all of the props here. So maybe add a little bit of tiny little dab of hot glue just to hold these in place, because they do come up in the way of the prop and sort of get in the way, and they'll cause you to crash, these little TPU braces underneath here. So either way you go, you're going to have a good time. If you want to save more props and fly it indoors, get the one with the prop guards, because you can take them on and off, and that makes a big difference. If you don't have the prop guards, you're kind of stuck with this one right here, and that's going to be the way it is. You might be able to buy that part on Lewis's site, but I haven't been on there and checked it out. So if anybody knows if you can buy that prop guard setup, let me know. It's probably going to be pretty affordable, because all this micro stuff is fairly cheap to buy. But hey, it's winter time, and I think you guys will have a good time with something, a little 1S flyer. Just make sure you buy the HV batteries, and you'll be happy with this little guy. How could we even complain about that? That's awesome. So thanks again for watching, you guys. I'm Justin Davis, and this has been my review of the BeeBee and the BeeBee Lite. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.